Hey Sneeples, it's Eric back here with another deck tech, and guys, I did it. I actually did it. I finally won an Armory with none other than herself, LEVIA. LEVIA! I actually think she could even possibly get some points in ProQuest season. So let's get to how you can play competitively with this hero that has been forever doomed to the F tier, but no more. So let's get right to it. Okay guys, we're going to do this video a little bit differently here. I'm going to show the physical cards instead of just doing it on digital, so that you can see that this is a real deck and I am really playing with it. Now, two things before we get started. I do say LEVIA instead of LEVIA. If you haven't noticed that by now, a lot of people say LEVIA. Sorry, that's just how I say it. Just get used to it for the remainder of this video. And second is, if you're a LEVIA purist, you're probably not going to like this deck because it looks more like a Reinhardt deck, but don't worry, this is still very much a LEVIA deck, and I'm going to explain why I choose LEVIA instead of Reinhardt. Alright, first, let's just get into the equipment and weapons here. We're running the two claws. The claws are just very good on the Blood Rush Bellow type turn, and that's really where we want to be at over the club, meat axe, and even Hexagore. We are not running enough blood depth for Hexagore. Alright, Crown of Providence is our headwear that's going to stay consistent throughout unless we're facing some wizards, which I'll get into. Vandal Spring Tunic is our desired chest piece, but we have a sideboard for that, which I'm sure you know what it is. We got Scabskin Leathers. This is the best brute equipment there is. We are going to be rolling dice often, and we are going to be using this Scabskin Leather effect to get multiple action points. And on that course, we are running Gambler's Glove so that we can make sure that every time we hit and not miss with a 1. Alright, coming into the sideboard pieces of equipment, we have Carrion Husk here. This is for the big attacking heroes like Guardians or Reinhardt or what have you. If we're expecting to be in a full block mode, this is Carrion Husk. This can help us keep a 4-card hand to really pop off. And then we have the Skull Horn for the wizards that we pair up with No Rune Gloves. We will bring in No Rune Gloves against Viserai, and really only Viserai and wizards. And then finally, guys, every boot player should run Quicken, or should have a Quicken token, and you know why. Okay, alright, let's get into the deck itself, and I want to start with the big card on why I chose to play LEVIA. Guys, this started with you guys. You know, we made this brute review video, and someone commented that there was a card for LEVIA, because in that video I said LEVIA got no pieces, and the card they said was Berserk. That Berserk has been working quite well. So ever since that comment, I decided to put this deck together and try it out, and I am very pleased. LEVIA can run this card better than Reinhardt, and the reason is because LEVIA has more 6 drops than Reinhardt does. So this Berserk card allows you to basically draw a card whenever you discard a card that has 6 or more, and that's amazing. On a minor effect, it does banish, which can help. You know, if we do have blood depth cards in our banish zone, this can help turn off blood depth if need be for LEVIA's sake. But that part's not super important. Really, it is. If we discard a card, we banish it, or you know, with 6 or more power, we banish it, and then we reveal the top card of our deck. If it has 6 or more power, we draw a card. That's why this card is so good. That's why we're running it. Obviously, we're running it 3 of here. And the whole deck is built around it because this card really helps us pop off. It helps our 1 attack turns become 2 or even 3 attack turns. And that's really what we desire. This just makes it where we're not losing any cards. And sometimes we're even gaining cards. So we'll get to that. But Berserk's a big reason why LEVIA is chosen over Reinhardt, and I'll show you why. One of the cards is Soul Harvest. Unfortunately, this is a specialization, so we can only have 1, but right here it is blue pitch that is a power 6, and that's one reason why Levia is better for this Berserk package than Rhinar. This is one reason. Let me show you 3 more. And that is Deadwood Rumblers. So Deadwood Rumblers, another blue pitch that has a 6 power. And that's really what we're looking for, because what we want to make sure is that we hit every time with Berserk, so we're getting maximum value. And by having these Levia specific cards, so you can only play these cards in the Levia deck, this means that we get 4 more additional hits, which is pretty damn huge, because the one thing that Brute is lacking is blue pitch 6 power. There's only one card, which is Record Romp, which is in this deck. I'll get to that later. But that's really one of the cards that is like used all the time, but now Levia has more. Okay, the other new card we get out of this set is Savage Beatdown, which is another card that this deck is built around. You know, being a 3 for 6, that if you discard another 6 is 3 for 12, is very, very good. It does have the caveat that you have to have discarded a card before this turn, and you need to discard another one as part of its cost. But when you're playing stuff like Berserk, you're never really losing cards from discarding, right? Because instead of going down a card from discarding, you're replacing it with the top card of your deck. So it allows for Savage Beatdown to be a very affordable card, where maybe it looks a little daunting at first. This is the Alpha Rampage replacement. We do not run Alpha Rampage. We run Savage Beatdown instead, because this card just hits harder in Levia. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to get through the reds here. And these are the reds that will have the common theme of discarding a card and then drawing a card. Oftentimes, there's more cards in our deck that are going to draw and then discard. But this card is the exception, because Savage Feast allowing us to discard and then draw a card. Like I said, with Berserk, we're discarding 1 card and then basically drawing 2 cards. And that's just value. And it's also only costs 1, which is very nice as well. Which means Berserk only costing 1, you can pitch a yellow or blue and then afford both these cards, which is awesome. And it blocks for 3. So Savage Feast is a very good card. If we don't, you might see it does not get an action point. So with this card, oftentimes you are rolling the Scabskin Leathers here. This is something you want to pair up with, because you want the extra action point after you drew your card. Okay. All right, next up is Bear Fangs. This is another card that you're going to roll the Scabskin Leathers with, because you will not have another action point, so you want to try to get that extra action point. This card draws a card and then discards a card. That's fine. That's actually more what we want, and it has the additional buff. It does not block. This deck is not a very blocking deck. Instead, this deck is a very combo aggro style deck. So a 2 for 6 or 8, which is hella good value, that draws and discards, does what we want. Okay, next up, this is one of the ways that we can oftentimes win games, and that's pulping. It's a 2 for 6 that can gain Dominate after drawing and then discarding if the card that we discard is 6 or more power. Our whole deck is going to be built off that, right? Because that's what Berserk's built off of. So this oftentimes will have Dominate because of that ability, and then also will have Go Again if they can't block with 2 non-equipment cards. So if they don't have a card in the arsenal, then this card will have Go Again, which is very, very good. Dominate, though, helps just win games sometimes. All right, another one here, another draw and then discard is Wild Ride. Another card that does not block. Pulping also did not block. 2 for 6, all the same. Just gains Go Again if you discard a card with 6 or more power. Pretty damn good, pretty damn good. Exactly what we want out of this deck. All right, so those are our reds. Now moving into our yellows that do the same. We've seen the blue version. We're also running the yellow of Deadwood Rumbler. It is a 3 for 7, which is, you know, pretty on par. I mean, ask Michael Hamilton. I'm sure he'll appreciate that. Doesn't block, though. Draw a card, then discard a card at random if the card with 6 or more is discard this way, banish card from a graveyard. So this is still drawing and then discarding. This one costs a little bit more, so it might be hard to get additional things, but if you like additional attacks. But if you have the cards in your hand or resources for it, then roll the Scab Skin Letters with this one so that you can have that extra action point. And then banishing a card from your graveyard. This is pretty relevant when you're going against Fi. You can banish their Phoenix. Arachne, you can banish their equipment. Or if Blood Depth is currently a thing for Levia right now, like if you have Blood Depth cards in your banish zone, this can help remove the Blood Depth tax of the turn. So that's why we have this card. All right, and then we mentioned this earlier. This is our blue 6-drop that also does what we want to do with this deck. Blue 6-drop, that's also discards a card to play it. We don't draw a card with this one. That's why we oftentimes won't just play it for what it's worth. Instead, oftentimes it's just used as a pitch. But it can also block for 3 and 6 are blue. Now we're gonna get into our non-attacks. This is not a lot, right? We don't want a lot of non-attacks. We want mostly just attacks. But this card is just way too good to pass up. Blood Rush Bellow. This is the best brute card printed, hands down. And if you can Blood Rush Bellow with a Berserk, I mean, oh my gosh. Okay, so you play your Berserk, which costs 1. Play your Blood Rush Bellow, that costs 1. Then you discard a card. And then with the Berserk trigger, you're going to draw a card, right? And then you're going to draw 2 more cards. And it's like, whew, you went from, losing 1 card to drawing 2 cards and losing 1 card and drawing 3 cards. I mean, that's just insane value. On top of that, all your brute attacks gain +2. And then, yeah, you'd never play this if you don't have this trigger. So, yeah, very, very good. And this also like turns on your claws, what have you. Finally, our last non-attack that does what we want as like basically the theme of this deck is Tear Limb from Limb. This one's a bit risky because it doesn't block. It is a blue pitch that does not block, so that can be pretty risky, especially it being a non-attack. But it does what we want to do with this deck, and it is a pretty high-rolling card, which this deck is a high-rolling deck. Draw a card and then discard a card at random. If the card with 6 or more power is discarded this way, the next brute attack action you play gains +X, where X is its base. So let's kind of go over that. So if you draw a card and discard a card, and then it was like a 6 power, so let's say it was like a Deadwood Rumbler, then let's say you come in with a Pulping. Now your Pulping is a 2 for 12, which is insane value. Drawing the card and discarding a card and having to go again. This does work with Berserk. It does cost 2, so you would need to pitch a blue to enable this. But it's actually very good with Berserk just because sometimes it can be kind of hard to afford to play the attack afterwards since this costs 2. But replacing it. Now I do have an eye in here. This is really because I don't have my 3rd Tear Limb from Limb. That's all that really is. It can be kind of nice as an eye, but really just get a Tear Limb from Limb, honestly. Okay. All right, so those are the cards that draw and then discard, or in the case of Savage Feast, discard and then draw, which all work very good with Berserk and very good to set up for Savage Beatdown. Now let's get into the cards we want to discard. And our best card that we want to discard is Beast Within, because Beast Within is basically Berserk on a card that is a power 6. Discarding this card allows us to replace it, which is amazing. Now, if you can play Berserk and then play Beast Within, now you're getting 2 cards, and that's just insane. And that's truly what Berserk does, is it makes all your 6 powers Beast Withins that don't hurt you. So that's really nice. Okay, so Beast Within, one of the cards we want to discard. Let's get into another one here, and that is another new card from Dynasty, Skullcrack. Skullcrack is very, very good just because oftentimes we do want that 1 extra resource. It does come in handy, and if it's just a card that you need to play, it's a 2 for 6. That's a good value. Okay, now we're going to get into the cards that kind of work with our combos. Doesn't necessarily contribute to it, but kind of work with it. And the first one's Riled Up here. It's a 3 for 6, but if you discarded a card of 6 or more this turn, it gains +1, so it's a 3 for 7. Oftentimes we can make that work. You know, if need be, it's a yellow pitch that's a 6 power, so that's okay too. But, you know, this card is like marginally better. And then another just marginally better card than like the rest of the cards out there is Pack Hunt. You know, just being able to block of it and make sure that the top card is a 6 power. Most times it is. We don't run hardly any non-attacks. Most of it's all attacks that are 6 power. But just in case for that one time that you might have a tear limb from limb on top, this allows you to put it on the bottom so you can make sure that your Berserk, your Bear Fang, Wild Ride, whatever you're going to be playing next turn will hit. Alright, now we can't play a Brute deck and not play Swing Big. This has nothing to do with the combo. It's just really good value. 2 for 8, right? And if you freaking tear limb from limb and then play Swing Big, that's a 2 for 16. I mean, I live that dream, right? Like, there's no way you don't want to try to make that happen. And then this is why we bring in the Quicken. You know, we have to at least be cordial enough to present it to our opponents if they did block it out. Okay. All right, now let's get into the cards that look more like a Levia deck. All right, and our first one is Dread Screamer. Dread Screamer being a 2 for 6 with Go Again, because most times we will have 3 cards to banish from our deck. This is very good. This is a card, however, that you really only want to play in the mid to late game, because this does have Blood Depth. And we have other cards that we've seen have Blood Depth, like these Deadwood Rumblers. And we want to try to avoid having Blood Depth cards in our graveyard, or when we play them, we want to make sure that there's like mostly non-Blood Depth cards in our graveyard, because we don't want Blood Depth in our banish zone. We don't want to have to deal with that Blood Depth tax. But we cannot, you know, we cannot overlook 2 for 6 of Go Again. I mean, that's just way too good. So that is one of the Levia cards that we're running. Let's get to another one here, and that's Hungering Slaughter Beast. Now, Hungering Slaughter Beast doesn't do anything special. It's just a yellow pitch that is a 2 for 6 that banishes with Blood Depth. So you might be wondering, like, why even risk playing this? And the reason is because sometimes we get to a point of the game where we do have Blood Depth in our banish zone. And if we need to turn off that Blood Depth, Hungering Slaughter Beast lets us do that. So that's why we will play some Blood Depth cards. Again, this is a late to or mid-range to late game card. I would not recommend playing this at all in the early game. Just use it to pitch. Okay, now let's get into the final cards of the deck here. And the first one is Reckless Swing. These are both going to be non-attack cards at the end, but we know if you're a Brute player, you know why you play Reckless Swing is because this card wins more games than any other card in our deck sometimes. Because just basically getting, you know, that 2 damage out of nowhere is just way too insane. It really puts your opponent on edge if they get down to 2 life, or even before then, because they know that they can't get down to 2 life. So that's why we play Reckless Swing, because of that value. And it's a blue pitch, right? Finally, we have our worst card of the deck, but it is a blue pitch that will sometimes be played, and that's Barraging Beatdown. The reason why this is a bad card, where typically it's a very good card, is because it's not a 6 power attack, and we are just using it as a blue that blocks for 3. It can be played in the late game or even in the early game or whenever it's necessary, just to, you know, have this ability. But with this type of deck, really wanting for Berserk to always hit or Savage Beatdown to come in hard, we really want to limit ourselves on this. And so this is really the only blue non-attack other than Reckless Swing that we run. And that's just how that goes. I had a ton of fun with this deck. And winning an Armory is always a fun thing to do, especially when it's with a hero that is always said to be the worst. So this is it, guys. This is a great way to play Levia. This is a great way to get some points on the board for her as well. And I hope that this has at least inspired those Levia loyalists to get back on the horse and ride at this Pro Quest. Thanks for listening, guys. and keep on fabbing. Hey guys, thanks for watching this video. If you like this shirt or the others we have just like it, we sell shirts and keychains and more to come. Go to fleshandbaubles.com, enter the promo SNEEP, and you can get 10% off your entire order. Some really cool stuff, some really cool gift ideas. We would really appreciate your help supporting us. Thank you.